everyone. This is Tracy Malone. Welcome to my video here on YouTube and to my podcast listeners out there in podcast land. I never give you guys cred, but you're always there to listen, and I really appreciate it. I am the founder of NarcissistAbuseSupport.com. It's a global resource that educates people, gives them all kinds of resources. We have 700 resources and so many different things that if you need legal aid, we've got it for every single state. If you're looking for a support group near you, we've got it. So there's a plethora of information on my site, narcissistabusesupport.com. We'll put the link down below. I am an international narcissistic abuse divorce coach, as well as just narcissist abuse coach. And today I've got a very special guest. Now, talking about divorces, we know that narcissistic divorces are pretty darn scary and often the most contentious that there could be in the high conflict world. They are not going to agree to anything. It's always going to be a fight. It's always going to be an argument. It's always hiding. It's obstruction. You got it. You know what this thing is. But there are people in this arena that choose to do it right, choose to not let it be a battle, choose to take the kids' feelings into consideration, choose to make better choices for their family so that the war doesn't cost them their future. So if you are one of those people, my guest today is Greg Wheeler, and he is a conscious uncoupling transformational relationship, divorce, and life coach. And he's a published author who's passionate about empowering people to uncouple consciously. And his work is based on Katherine Woodward Thomas's book, Conscious Uncoupling. But I brought him here today because for those who are looking to do it right, they might not know the answers. They might not understand how it can happen. And so let's go talk to Greg and see just the benefits to you, the family, the children, and to your financial future by not having World War III, or even the War of the Roses, which you've all probably seen that movie. And that's how most divorces with a narcissist are categorized, right? So let's go meet Greg and see if this might be something that if you're looking for that more conscious way of doing a divorce, that this might be the answer. Okay. Hi, Greg. Welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Tracy. It's wonderful to be here with you.
We have a great topic today, and I've already told the audience all about you. So I want to start off with just an outline of what is conscious uncoupling.
Well, bear with me because it's going to take a little bit to explain, but as many of the people you already deal with know, sometimes for many different reasons, relationships run into problems. They begin to unravel, they start to become undone. And currently, in first marriage divorce rates around the world are like 40% and about 50% in the United States. So conscious uncoupling is about how to break up, and sometimes, rarely, how to recouple in a whole new way. And it's based on Katherine Woodward Thomas's New York Times best-selling book, Conscious Uncoupling, 5 Steps to Living Happily Even After. And it was published back in 2015, so this is still relatively new, and it's taking this space of people struggling through divorce or difficult relationships by storm. And so Katherine has been training and certifying conscious uncoupling coaches worldwide for almost 10 years now. And I'm actually certified by Katherine, and I'm one of her mentor and faculty coaches that help in the certification process of new coaches. So I know you asked about, well, what is it? It's a program that takes you through an ontological semantic process where you learn to see and name, face, embrace, and then replace the negative patterns you learned growing up that you've been using to create and live and be living in your relationships and your life. So how does that work? Well, the process, the conscious uncoupling process, enables you to transform your identity which is the way you are living from who you learned to be growing up, to actually start living as who you were born to be. And this enables you to move forward with creating relationships and a life that you want. So then when you're going through a conscious uncoupling divorce, it gives you the opportunity to learn your part in co-creating what happened. And that gives you some compassion and empathy to be more understanding and more realistic in the divorce process, which then allows you to create a working relationship and a set of rules to guide you by. Now, that's a mouthful, so I apologize if that sounds like a lot. So please ask some questions about anything I said there.
Yeah, sure. This again, I think we're introducing this to my audience, but as you know, this is a narcissist abuse channel, and so I'd say 99% of my people are in a divorce if they're divorcing with a narcissist, which is the opposite of conscious uncoupling. It is more like war, battle, death to us part, and someone's gonna die, because that's how ugly it gets, right? And so who is the ideal couple for doing this? And if they are with a narcissist, which you and I had talked about, which is what I want you to share, is how can this benefit them if the other person won't even hand in their paperwork?
Right. So a divorce is one of the most traumatic things that you're going to go through in your life. Broken dreams, broken security. You go from one home, one set of bills, to two sets of bills, to trying to figure out how you're going to survive. And so it's traumatic, it's scary, there's a lot of unknowns. And so, yes, sometimes it gets extremely difficult and antagonistic because, some people feel they're fighting for survival. They don't know how they're going to survive on the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a challenging environment to walk into, because the rules of engagement, the way you're communicating with one another, you created long time ago when you met this other person in your relationship. You literally taught each other the dance of your relationship by what you said or didn't say. When someone asked you a question and you really didn't want it or do it, and you said yes anyway, you trained them that that was okay. So now you're in a situation where you're saying no to this other person, or you're saying, this is what I need, for the first time, and they're not used to hearing that. And so this then is scary for them, and it's scary for you. And the best thing that I can offer is that how you go through the divorce is going to affect you for the rest of your life. There's so much money involved, legal fees, getting yourselves set up. And it can be done so much easier than that if you can start to work together. Now, I understand that you're talking about a situation where people who come to you and they're already have knives out and they're at each other's throats. Well, to follow up on that analogy, there's going to be a lot of bloodletting and everybody loses.
Mm-hmm.
So do you really want everybody to lose? Do you want to lose? Do you want your partner to lose? There's a better way.
Mm-hmm.
There's a better way, because you both need to survive this. You both need and want to have a life after this.
Mm-hmm.
Both, and if there's children involved, you want to do it in a way that can create some safety and security and not create emotional trauma, that they're going to repeat the same kind of relationships that you've just demonstrated for them in their lives. So there's a lot of reasons why you want to make the effort to take a break, pause, and say, this is not in our best interest. It's not in my best interest. It's not in the kids' best interest. we got to find a way to do it differently. Otherwise, we're both going to lose big time.
Yeah. And the financial, cost is not just the lawyers. I mean, it is everything. People's lives get imploded in my world, and the uncertainty is so frightening when you're in that battle. But
Yes.
thing, if we could do it where we don't get to that escalation, and we come in with respect and empathy, and we come in a place that's like less hurt. I think that's, it's usually the hurt that drives the battle. It's one or the other side, and sometimes both, where it is just, well, they did this, so I'm going to do that. And it's a lawyer game too, as you and I both know. It
Right.
is tit for tat. Well, they did that, well, then we'll do this. They've just upped the game, we'll go higher, and it just becomes where $100,000 divorce is a low cost divorce in a narcissist. I've had
Right.
with $1 million and $5 million bills to
Right.
fight for 5 years, and it just doesn't end. And so, when we look at divorce being so painful, so scary, what are the 3 most traumatic things people often experience, in your opinion?
Well, okay, there's something in common with even good divorces, okay? And part of those things are the dreams, the things that you've staked your life on. The last 15, 20 years, you've worked so hard to try and build a family, to try and build a community, to try and build a career, to have a wonderful house. And so that is one of the big things that's really hard and creates a lot of animosity and anger. How dare you take these dreams away? How dare you crush this and take it all away? And so that's one of the really most traumatic things. The other thing is family. You've built a community of support with in-laws and sister-in-laws and brother-in-laws and
Nieces.
grandparents that are in-laws that are now part of the family, that are part of the holiday schedule and everything. And so in a difficult divorce, in a conscious uncoupling, you maintain and you nurture that extended community. But when you're in World War III, it shatters and there's no rules. You don't know how you're going to survive that. So that's also extremely traumatic. And then the last thing that's also really traumatic is you're going to be dealing with this person for the rest of your life, because there are back to school nights, because there are birthdays, because there are graduations. If they're blessed with a grandchild, there's going to be grandchildren events. And then there's going to be marriages of the grandchildren. So it just doesn't stop. There's always this more. And do you really want to go through life at each other's throat for all of those events, fighting over who gets to go to which one because you can't stand to be there when the other one's there? Or do you want to really acknowledge that you created something together and you have a vested interest in creating something that works for yourself and for this extended community and for your children? Because if not, that's going to be the third trauma that's just going to keep bleeding and hurting as you go through life.
Yeah.
And the fourth one, which I didn't mention, is the money piece, because that's really scary. Some people put that first.
Yeah.
But the ones that I mentioned are going to last a lifetime. Typically 3 to 5 years after a divorce, somehow you figure out the money things.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think you're absolutely right that the loss of, security, the loss of family, I'm still grieving over a niece I haven't seen in 25 years because that we got a divorce, and it was like, boom, person's dead to you. It's a very scary thing to happen, right? So how does conscious uncoupling help?
So conscious uncoupling really is based on 2 things. The first thing that you get to benefit from conscious uncoupling is you get to see, you get to name, then you get to face. And once you face them, you can embrace the negative patterns that you brought into your relationship when it started, that then became part of your marriage, that then also became part of the problem. And your partner did the same thing. These are things that you were gifted growing up with. Family karma. Your father was an alcoholic. Your mother was self-centered and didn't pay enough attention to you. They became overly demanding. You weren't good enough. You learned certain ways of surviving, of thriving, and taking care of yourself that stood you in good stead. But these are things that you bring in as baggage to any relationship. So the first thing in conscious uncoupling is you get to see them and you get to understand how you helped co-create the relationship and the problems in the marriage that it is now. So the good thing is that you get to heal and you get to learn from those so you don't repeat those going forward in your life. That's number one. That's one of the really good things about conscious uncoupling, because you get to grow and evolve. But that it helps going through the divorce, because then you can have a little bit more compassion and a little bit more empathy for your partner, because you realize that you were part of the problem. And if they're going through it as a couple, and by the way, when I do couples work, I take them both separately through the program. The work is so deep and so personal that they would never be able to share and be so vulnerable and so honest if their partner is sitting there next to them on the couch. So I take them through separately. They go through the 5 steps, which is 8 sessions, and then I do joint work. And then they get to share what they learned, and they get to clear the air, and they get to be vulnerable and honest and communicate it in ways that they've never communicated before in their life many times. And so this then opens up the opportunity to discuss, well, you deserve to be happy and you deserve to be happy. How can we do this in the best way possible? How can we do this in the best way for the kids? We don't want the kids to be scarred. We want them to have both sets of grandparents. So it opens up this willingness to be more communicative, a little bit more compassionate, a little bit more understanding, that maybe you're not a good fit, but you still created something together and you want the children and whatever you created. Some people have a business that they have to split up, and some people need to stay in a business. And that can be almost as difficult as dealing with children in terms of a divorce. But it gives you the ability to have conversations in a completely different way, where it's win-win instead of win-lose. Does that make sense?
It all makes sense. I mean, it sounds perfect. It sounds like we should be doing all divorces in this so that people don't repeat what they, the childhood wounds. I know I brought into my second marriage stuff I didn't even know I had that was from childhood. And I've now done the work, but I didn't during all that time. If there had been an opportunity to, do this work and dig through,
Right.
it's often, and I can hear the people on the comments right now saying, but they cheated and they're hiding money. And how can I trust somebody like this? Because, when trust has been broken, it's very hard to sit down and go, okay, we're doing this for the kids. And I know this is what needs to be done, but it's when you've been betrayed and found out that your money has been, sent to another country, that's a huge wound for people to be able to sit down. And again, they're not at the same table for a little while there, but it's hard for them to see through the woods here, I think.
Well, I agree. It takes a lot of opportunity. The way I like to approach that is, okay, trust, but verify. And so if only one person's going to be a winner in the divorce, then you're both losing. So in order for there to be some success in the divorce, which creates a happily even after possibility for both of you, you need to be able to talk and to work through these things. So there are certified divorce financial analysts.
Mhm.
So, okay, you decide, all right, we're going to do this equitably. We have a mediator, assuming, that's a best case. It doesn't always get there because if you're mediating with lawyers, it's costing a fortune and there's back and forth and back and forth. But if you can get to the point where you can have a discussion, look, we want to do this in the best way possible for ourselves, for the children, for our extended community, for our family, then you can start to bring a mediator in and you do the due diligence.
Mhm.
If you say you want to be fair, or you get to a point where you want to be fair, then somebody's going to be open to working with a certified divorce financial analyst who's going to say, okay, here's all the money, here's what we found, how are we going to deal with this? And then you have the honest discussions.
Yeah.
It's not easy. There's no panacea here. It really does take a certain willingness to want to have a different future where you're not at each other's throats for the rest of your life. There's so much pain. Here's an analogy. When you allow yourself or you encourage yourself to be super angry, super frustrated, super mad at somebody, it's like holding a burning coal in your hand. It is burning you. It's not hurting the other person. The other person maybe doesn't even know how angry or hurtful or upset you are. But that burning coal is burning you. It's using up all this energy. It's creating all this negative ill will. It's creating an inability to communicate. It's creating an inability to negotiate. So the more you hold on to that, the more it's going to hurt you, and then it's going to hurt whatever possibility you're trying to create for a different kind of future going forward. I want to go back to one thing you said about you realized that there were things that you didn't know until your second marriage that you then repeated. Well, it's very common. Upwards of 70% of second marriages fail because people don't take the time to do the work to figure out their part in co-creating what went wrong in the first one. And so then they do it again.
There I am. It's we don't know what we don't know till we know it. But on that note, like you went through a divorce, I think it was over 20 years ago, and you didn't know about this because it was only invented in 2000, whatever, 15.
Yep.
And so you have learned a lot. And how did it change your life? Because besides being a conscious uncoupling coach, that's a change, but it has changed your inner being as well. Do you want to share that with my audience?
Sure, I would love to. So bear with me a minute because it's a little bit of a story. So my divorce, which happened back in 97, was like a war of the roses divorce. Neither one of us, I don't think, were narcissists, but we had so much pain. There were 4 children involved. My youngest was 6, my oldest was 11 at the time of the divorce. And my former wife was originally from Missouri, and I grew up on the East Coast, and we were living in New Jersey. So this was the family home. My 2 youngest were born here in that home. And so she decided after the divorce that she was going to go back to her home state of Missouri and take the kids 1,000 miles away. So I was distraught and angry and frustrated. I had part of my identity was being a father. And just to really put an exclamation mark on that, I was divorced in April. She left with her half of the goods in June, like June 10th. She came back on August 1st with her sister in a minivan, picked up the 4 kids and the dog, and then was married on September 13th. And so I was angry, the kids were far away, and to make a long story short, after 2 years of jumping on airplanes and staying in hotels to see my kids, I went through bankruptcy. And It was a really difficult time in my life. Fast forward to 2016, 2017, when I first found Katherine and I started doing the conscious uncoupling work. In 2017, I jumped into the program, not just to do it, but to become a coach. So I was going through the coach training program. And in that process, I realized that I had this false identity, this learned behavior that I wasn't good enough. So I was an overgiver, and I maybe showed up as a little controlling because I had to give and be a hero, and I had to do it the right way. And I worked too hard. I worked at 60-hour weeks as an engineer before I switched careers. And so I wasn't home or around. And so I realized my part in co-creating what happened. And so I healed myself and realized that instead of being not good enough, that I'm more than good enough and I don't have to prove myself to anyone. And so I can just be myself, and I can be more giving without attachment, without giving to get, without needing external validation.
Mm-hmm.
So when I healed myself in 2017, I changed the whole energy in the family. And my kids then said, I think it was 2018, they said, things are so much better. Why don't we all get together for Christmas? You and Mom and the four of us, and we'll celebrate Christmas together. And I was like skeptical, but I said, okay. At the time, my former wife was still married to the guy that she got married to 20 some odd years ago. And I said, okay, let's give it a try. So she had this summer cottage, which was really small, 1-bedroom house. So the 4 kids, her, not her husband, but her, and their dogs, my kids' dogs, all showed up for the first Christmas together over 5.5 years ago. And it was wonderful. We cooked and we exchanged presents, and we did a lot of healing because we got to share and talk about things, and it was wonderful. And we've gotten together for 5 Christmases in a row now. And if you had told me 7 years ago that this was even possible, I would have said, you're smoking something, or, you know, you have no understanding how difficult or horrible this was.
Mm-hmm.
So I really am passionate about this work. It's why I believe in this work, and it's why I want to bring this work to other people so that it can change their lives in positive ways.
Wow, what a beautiful story. I mean, it's a testimony to doing the work, and also probably looking back at the years that were wasted, right?
Right.
And going, gosh, you know, again, you use that anger analogy, and I teach a class in anger, and I talk about, like, you are the one holding it, and you're walking around and they're having a party, and you're
Right.
and who's the one that's eating from inside, which is like the coal, you know, it's not healthy. And so to be able to free that, and then have your children go, you know what, this is so good, like, and you've set it up, and it's a beautiful story. So thank you for sharing that. I know that you know, to share personal stuff is hard, but you know, it's a hero story. It's a
Well, I'm actually proud to share it because it's about the power of this work. And I've had people who have come to me to consciously uncouple, and through doing the work, it's rare, but I've had a couple of couples recouple instead of uncouple.
wow.
Because when they're done with the work, they realize their part in co-creating what happens,
Mhm,
take responsibility for that, and they make a commitment not to do those things anymore.
mhm.
And when they're both changing, then they have the opportunity to create something new. It's not about fixing the old anymore. It's about creating something new based on this different way of showing up.
Yeah,
And so it's really powerful work.
sounds great. Is there anything that we missed that you wanted to share? Any important things about conscious uncoupling?
Yeah, so I'd like to talk about a little bit about therapy versus coaching. Conscious Uncoupling is a coaching type program.
Mhm.
Therapy is amazing. There's certain really deep traumas with PTSD, or you might need EMDR type work, that there's really deep trauma that people get triggered with. And yet, most of trauma, traditional therapy, is backward focused. It's focused on reviewing the pain, processing it, moving through it. In the Conscious Uncoupling program, the work that we do is really future focused. It's based on an intention that you're coming for help, that you want to create something different going forward. So there's an intention. And so I don't know if you've worked with a gym coach before, but when you hire a coach, you work with a coach and you say, oh, I want to learn how to do 20 push-ups, or I want to learn how to bench press 250 pounds. And so then the coach comes up with a plan with how to do that.
Mhm.
Well, Conscious Uncoupling provides the framework and the plan to achieve doing the work to realize the intention of creating a better, possible, positive future.
Mhm.
And so, yes, it's not easy work, because you have to do a little bit looking back to understand, oh my gosh, I did that. And so by doing that, I caused this. And
Mhm.
not only did I cause myself pain by doing that, but I caused my partner pain by doing that.
Mhm.
Wow, now that I see that, I can learn from it, and I can promise and commit that going forward, when that situation happens, I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to do it like this.
Mhm.
And so there's this learning opportunity, and that takes some really tough honesty and vulnerability to be able to look at that and to admit that and to learn and grow.
Mhm.
So it's amazing work. It's very future focused. It's not just unpacking in the past. The best analogy I have for that, I don't know how much you worked in the business space, but most businesses have some program called continuous improvement. They want to learn from, oh, this product didn't sell very well, we need to tweak it, or this product has this problem on the manufacturing line. They go in, they do this deep analysis, they do, user studies, and they change the way the process on the manufacturing line works, and they figure out something better, and then they try it and test it.
Mhm.
That's part of what we're doing, only this is about who we're being. This is about how we're showing up. This is about our commitments to loving ourselves in ways that we've never been able to love ourselves before, which then let us love someone else differently and better than we ever have before. So it's a different kind of program.
Yeah. Now you were doing it when you were training to be one of these coaches, but do people on their own do it to get those wounds healed?
Well, they can. The book is really well done. You said something earlier that you don't know what you don't know until you know it. Well, a lot of times, if you're doing it on your own, it can be hard to see something
Mm.
that you've been doing and has been that way for as long as you can remember in your life. You can't maybe see it from outside of that perspective. It's like the fish in water. The fish never knows that he's in water because he's always been in water. Well, if you've been showing up like I did as I'm not good enough, I didn't know I was showing up as I'm not good enough. I didn't know it was there in my life
Mhm.
until someone helped me see it.
Mm.
So yes, you can get a lot of benefit out of reading the Conscious Uncoupling book, 5 Steps to Living Happily Even After, by Katherine Woodward Thomas. But not that I'm saying you have to work with me. There's a number of certified different coaches in Katherine's work in this field, but you're going to get it at a different level.
Nice.
Coach is going to help you see things that maybe you've never seen before.
Wow. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So let's close this off, because I know that you have a brand new book out that's called Single Dad's Essentials, the 12 most important things single dads need to know. Do you want to share that book with us and tell people how they can reach out to you?
Sure. So it's not a really big, thick book.
Ooh.
It's because I was an engineer before I became a coach. It's really kind of the do's and don'ts and the facts of it. It's a little bit about my history with my divorce and what I learned and how I survived, because I didn't share this with you, but we had a clause in my divorce that once the kids turned 12, they could choose where they wanted to live. And so basically they choose to come live with me.
Oh,
So I had the 4 kids as a single dad, and I had no family in the state of New Jersey. So I had to figure out how to maintain an engineering career of 50, 60 hours a week and still keep these kids safe and get their homework done and have food available and blah, blah, blah. So all of that is captured in this book. And so I highly recommend it if you're thinking about divorce. And if you change the pronouns, it's also good for single moms.
mhm, nice.
It's a lot of the advice. There's some father specific advice, because men typically don't ask for help as easy as women do. Women are much better at creating networks
Mhm.
and creating a community of support. And that's part of what's emphasized in here for guys to do as well. So how do they find it? Go to my website, gregwheelercoaching.com. You scroll down near the bottom, there's a link that you can find the book. There's a digital copy, and then there's the printed copy that's available.
Nice. Well, I can't thank you enough for all that you have educated us on today. I hope that there are couples that see this, and I do have couples that come on and go, we don't want that. So this is such a good alternative. And thank you for all the work that you've done and your vulnerability today. And, just thank you for being you.
Well, thank you so much, Tracy. It's an honor to be here with you. And believe it or not, I really consider it an honor to work with each of the clients I get to work with. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
So
you.
thank you so much.
Well, I hope you guys found that helpful. Greg is a master at this, and teaches this and helps other coaches get on board with learning the modality of helping people in this way. So all of his information is down below. I hope you learned something, and I hope that this sticks for a few people who really want to do it right in the divorcing of a narcissist arena. So this is Tracy Malone. Thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed, please do. If you haven't liked and followed my channel, please do. If you're on podcast, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you again soon.